This is the noise oscillator, and even though it's a small part of this synth, it's a big part of what makes producers like Skrillex and ISOxo's drops so impactful. Listen to this bass. It sounds a little dull, but if you notice, if I turn on the noise oscillator and map LFO1 to its level, this noise oscillator is on a mid-range bass. But what does it actually do? As you can hear, it fills out the bass by adding sort of a texture to it. It just helps glue it all together more. By doing this, you have more room to work with. You can add more stuff in higher frequencies without making your entire song muddy. Also using OTT. So if I turn that on, and this also works like an extra distortion, so it sounds louder without actually being louder in the metering. It's a really subtle effect, but it works real nice. And this is just one of the several things that makes ISOxo's drops so impactful. If you're watching this, you might be frustrated that your trap drops aren't hitting as hard as ISO or Skrillex. So in this video, I'm going to show you why these artists are so good at making these type of drops, and by the end, you'll be able to move your music in the direction of... While I'll be talking about the details that make these songs work, I don't want you to think of these as definitive methods, because for me anyway, it's not about being right or wrong in this specific production technique, but I instead focus on whether or not I like the thing I'm making. On top of that, none of these are going to work unless you do the P word that some of you seem to be scared of. So if you're okay with that, stick with me and you'll be so much happier with the music that you make. Hi, I'm Ash. Welcome back to my channel, where I make music to help you make music. And if you're ready to get into the details of heavy trap, click that like button and let me know why your drops aren't hitting down in the comments. Or if you're shy, leave an emoji representing nerds, cause I need the engagement. And with all that out of the way, let's get into another detail to make a harder hitting drop. And it all comes down to these secret but not so secret layers. I talked a bit about the high end and how you can add noise, so now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, the low end, and some tricks that you can do with the sub bass. And you might need to put on headphones to hear this, but I have this section of the song here where the sub is doing a lot of movement, and I've got that happening because there's not a lot of drums going on in the background. Or when I say no drums, I mean no big kicks or snares. And that's another trick that ISOxo uses to keep it moving, and that's using sub notes in order to act as a rhythmic glue for your drop. Going through the notes, it's just jumping between octaves, and because I have my sub bass set to one voice, mono voice, and I turned on glide, that gives the notes a little bit of bounce. Since it's sweeping through the pitch, it almost sounds a little percussive. These types of hidden rhythms can help glue together your song, especially if you don't have a lot of kick or snare going on. And these first few tips are cool, but if you use them wrong, you can end up making your song more cluttered. So this next detail guarantees that your main sounds hit hard. I'm talking space management. Now, how do we do that? Space management means taking those high-end frequencies that I talked about earlier and spreading them out through widening them. We're widening high-end elements to make space for big, meatier sounds. In order to make room for these, let's say we have some white noise here. And method one is you can put a utility on and simply turn up the width. Another thing you can do as utility is, instead of doing just straight up width, you can right click and go to mid side mode and push it off to the sides. So this is all the way middle. If the sound itself has no side frequencies, it can sound washed out. That's why for this I opted with just a normal width, because it takes the actual file and widens it rather than isolating the side frequencies. Another method you can use to widen is by using a delay and using the Haas effect. You can look that up, or you can just copy these settings down on this delay plugin. I put that on this hat. A very subtle effect. It's just essentially making space for stuff like kicks, snares, and main basses. And a third method you can do, like I did on this crash here, has barely any processing on it. Can you see what I did? Do you know? Yes, just over here. I panned it slightly to the left. That's one way that you can add width. Now, if it was more of a rock song, I would probably pan it even more, because if you're listening to a drum kit in a room, cymbal is usually on the left side, and that's why you're panning it to the left. Creates a more natural sound. But since we're in EDM land, we can't pan that much, so I'm just panning ever so slightly. But even just tiny changes like that can all add up. And I'm just doing different methods so that I have differing levels of wideness. The goal here is just to make space, and this works because a lot of your big sounds are all down the middle of the stereo field. What you might do is try to add width to bass sounds, but that'll end up sounding thin because these sounds should be down the middle. So essentially creating width, but doing it on the elements that benefit from being wider. Now, with all this high end, we still need a way to retain that punch, especially of the drums. So that leads us to this next technique, which is not really a big technique. It's just a good practice to have. And that is just group sidechain. Well, as you can see here, I've got everything in a group. In Ableton, you can just select whatever tracks you have, go Control G, and that easily groups them all. These are also called buses in other DAWs. So if you're using a different DAW and you want to do the same thing, just look up how to create a bus and then just route all of your tracks that you want in that group or bus to one specific channel. The reason I do this is so that I can apply an effect on all of them at the same time. And it's a very simple effect. It is literally just a compressor, old school side chain compression. Set it to the kick and the snare, and then I'll just pull down the threshold until it just catches the tops. I like to do an auto release so that the samples that are coming in, if they're a different length, it kind of matches, but this is just a very light side chain, so it doesn't have to be exact like you would do for, say, a bass or something, so that the kick and the snare come through no matter what. Now, speaking of side chain, you might have added some to your basses, and you might have done the thing where you do a volume side chain, and you find that, we're losing a bunch of punch. So something like my Gigasub here, not very punchy. But what you can do is put a track delay on it. And I've just got this rack set up right here. And all this is doing is pushing the track forward a few milliseconds, so it catches that initial transient punch. Notice how it gets lost a little. Very subtle effect. In old Ableton, they had a way that you can just delay the track. The delay track option is buried in a bunch of menus and I can't find it anymore. I think it's like here or something. It's like in here and over here. Track options. Yeah, this one. This works too. You can do the exact same thing, but there's a lot of menu. It doesn't matter which way you use. You can use the delay plugin. Just make sure it's 0 feedback, 100% dry wet. And then I just mapped this knob to the time and make sure they're synced. So all it's doing now is taking that audio signal and moving it forward a little bit. Another way that you can do this, actually, the more ideal way to do this, multiple methods. If you're in Serum itself, by setting up your LFO so that its first hit is slightly delayed. The rate is a quarter note, but I've got 2 curves, which makes it an 1/8 note. And on the first 1/8 note, you can see that the curve, it's not here, it's here. And that slight delay kind of saves it from the sidechain. If you've got a big scooping sidechain taking out all your volume, by delaying your main sounds, it allows it to have the sound still be punchy and the drums staying punchy at the same time. If I put this here, it sounds a little muddier. So by doing this, just a little cleaner. Now this one is still on the beat because since it's eighth notes, the drums aren't really hitting when this eighth note hits. But if I was to do something with a 4 to the floor beat, I might change this up to do this. But for this example, I've got this hitting on the beat because I need that punch to be on the beat. Plus it adds a little slight variation for the wobbles so that the wobbles aren't exactly the same each time. So wrapping up, it's basically just adding some high end if you want to make something hit harder, making sure that high end is spread out in the stereo field a little so that it makes room for your big sounds, and doing deliberate timing so that when those big sounds do hit, they're not fighting with any side chain compression that you're doing, and making sure that everything stays punchy. But you might be wondering what makes this all work though. There's still one thing that ISO and Skrillex do that you might not be doing. And just because you made it this far into the video, I'm gonna tell you. Think of it like a bonus tip. But first, if you've been on this channel for a while, you know that DistroKid is the best way to release your music and upload to streaming services. If you're smart, you'll know that in addition to good music, you also have to have a strong social media presence or even potentially create content. Because the reality is no one's gonna hear your music if you don't know they exist. But don't just post boring, new song out now posts. Check this out. DistroKid's goodies menu. It's got a robust set of tools that make releasing your music and promoting your music easy and professional. Some of these tools include artist verification and connection. You can now link your music distribution to popular platforms like TikTok easily and link right to your new release. Think about how you can use your song as a TikTok audio and create content around that. But wait, if you don't feel like making content, there's also this. Get your music onto another content creator's radar, like a Twitch streamer or YouTuber, letting them know that they can use your song in their content. Because in this menu, you also get an allow list on YouTube so that it doesn't get flagged by Content ID, making your music more desirable for any potential content creators. And don't even get me started on promo materials like cards and canvases to make your release pop, and most of these are included with your $23 a year subscription. You can explore all of these options yourself by signing up for DistroKid using my VIP link. Doing so also supports my channel, and it'll also give you 7% off your first year. Thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. Now, think of it like a bonus tip. And this is what I call not being just deliberate with your timing, but deliberate with your sound selection and your placement. Let's take these first two beats. There's actually not that many layers that are being played. Voice, one small hit, main sound, which is this sample, into a vocal chop and a string hit. Of course, layered with the drums as well. And then when we get to the actual meat of the drop, those first few sounds have disappeared and made room for our main lead and our mid-range basses and our drums. But underneath that, aside from just our drums, it's all very deliberate. So that's like 2 to 3 really good layers. I try to think this way because it lets you decide what works really quickly. When I first made this drop, I had way too much going on. I think it sounded something like that, and literally all I did was take away this music layer. What I'm trying to say with this is every sound that you put in should have a purpose. On top of all this too, it also helps with mixing, because think about it, what's easier to mix? 100 plus different sound design layers of everything slightly being different, or 6 to 7 well-defined ideas? But the question is, how do you get good at deciding all of this? We go back to the P word that I mentioned earlier. No, it's practice. And this doesn't just mean blindly make songs. Practice, in my opinion, includes listening to a bunch of songs, getting inspired by music outside of the genre you make so that you can refine your taste and your palette. Then after that, making a bunch of songs. Because I can tell a lot about a producer if all they listen to is the genre that they make. Could give you a fresh perspective on some things that you may have missed. But when it comes down to it, there's not a lot of technical wizardry going on, even in this project here. I instead try to focus on foundational knowledge. And if you want to know what kinds of foundational concepts work, check out this video I made which focuses on the broader elements of this same song. Or if you'd rather see me make music in a more realistic setting, making decisions in real time, doing it all from scratch, I have a whole playlist called Cookups where I make music from scratch. And if you've made it this far, you're a legend. If there's any other artists you want me to break down, comment below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and go make some bangers. Peace.